Welcome in. It's another episode of Shoot the Gap. Jorge Edwards and myself, Nate Markham, bringing you all you need to know on the IDP side of the football for Week 7. What's up, man? It is we are over a third of the way done with the fantasy season. We keep chugging along. I'm Nate Markham. Joining me is the Week 6's number 5 ranked IDP ranker over at Fantasy Pros. Congratulations, Jorge. The Jorge Edwards. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, man. It's great to be back in the IDP ranking good graces and hoping to work my butt off to make sure I join you in Hollywood and getting to the top here of representing the IDP people here at Fantasy and Frames. Otherwise, I'm doing great, man. I'm excited to talk shop. If I may, we had our show on Friday, and one of the things I discussed was Calais Campbell potentially getting a sack versus Washington, given. And I didn't say, and I remember specifically I said, you're not starting Calais Campbell, but if there's a prop bet out there on DraftKings or FanDuel Sportsbook that he gets a sack, you may want to put it down given the matchup. And not only did he get one, what I didn't know, though, was that was his 100th sack. And they made it a point during the show that he said when coming into this season, he realizes that he's not going to be in a position to win a Super Bowl anytime soon. But one thing he wanted to do before he retired was get to 100 sacks. So congrats to Calais Campbell.
Did you see the video, the replay, at least when the overhead view looking down of Calais Campbell and how he shed? I think it was Cosme. Yeah, really, I love that camera angle, by the way. But yeah, so if tomorrow, when you get a chance to check out the IDP roundup for Week 6, when you go to the Washington Atlanta blurbs, you will see, spoiler alert, where it says Jorge Edwards mentioned Calais Campbell as a potential sack candidate. If you listened, you won. 4 tackles, 2 quarterback hits, and a sack. Still not a weekly starter, but that's why you play the matchups, especially if you could bet. See, I wish I could bet on that. That would have been nice. I would have loved to have, jump in and take advantage of something like that, because it was a good one. But
it's a good story. It's a good story.
Nice. Yeah. So Jamie's in the chat. Jamie, how are you, my friend? Jamie says he, first of all, says, "What's up, guys?" And I say, great to see you as always. He just got off an IDP podcast with Steve Hungarter on IDP Guys. Steve is just started that podcast, I believe, last week. It's a really good show. He's doing a really good job. I am actually joining him on that show on November 22nd, I believe. It's a show about rankings. And so we will have our rankings out and we'll discuss that a little bit. And hopefully it's on the heels of a solid week, not like a 17th overall finish for me this week, which, I will say some of these weeks where I don't go in and fine tune, I can tell. And I feel like last week was a week where I didn't go in and really do my best. I let people down, and I apologize for that. But here we are for redemption, or at least I am. You didn't let anybody down. And
pump the brakes, Justin Timberlake. We're not going to cry you a river just yet, because you're still sitting pretty at 3rd overall in the season, which is a huge accomplishment. But I get what you're saying, and that's what makes you awesome, Nate. You always want to put out the best stuff out there, and I have no doubt you'll bounce back in a big way this week.
Well, like Kobe, what's there to get excited about? It ain't over yet. The job's not done, not finished. But the job hasn't even started for Week 7 for Shoot the Gap, and let's jump right in. Let's talk about a couple the negatives. Unfortunately, some of the injury news across the NFL, starting with a familiar name, one in Joey Bosa for the Los Angeles Chargers. little bit of a toe injury, limited in practice today. As with Joey Bosa, the hard thing is predicting just which direction. Luckily, limited practice for Joey Bosa on a Wednesday is actually probably a positive, right?
You know, yeah, I mean, it could be worse, right? And as you know, behind the scenes, we have our show sheets up, so we have an idea of where we're going throughout the show. And I just pulled an audible and just cut and copied and pasted something that I was going to talk about later into this segment because I think it's very applicable because we are talking about Joey Bosa. Um, let me give you all some background information. Using Fantasy Pros IDP scoring, since the beginning of 2022, he has only tallied 2 double-digit fantasy point performances. Now, yes, a lot of 2022 he was injured, but even this year, he only has one.
Mm-hmm.
Last year in 2022, when he was healthy, which is like the first 4 games of the season, something like that, he had a win rate of 24.2%, which is like super elite, super awesome, exactly what you want to see. This year, it's 11.1%, again, coming off of an injury-riddled season. We go back to him missing multiple games. 23, he's only played 4 games. Last year, 5. 21, played a full complement of games. 2020, 12 games. I have to, and me, maybe I'm a little bit invested in this because I am a Joey Bosa manager in certain leagues, but I'm honestly having to ask myself this question. Have we gotten to the point with Joey Bosa that we were just seeing such an increase in productivity from other players moving up their rankings boards that it may be time to start thinking about, especially like in dynasty leagues, trying to move on and trade him away for either name value or any value? Do we prioritize him in our redraft leagues as being somebody who's necessarily a must start because his last name is Bosa? Or should we kind of read the tea leaves, as it were, and get ahead of the curve and say, I'm not liking what's happening. Maybe I should cut bait before things get, which is crazy to say because, when we think about, anyone named Bosa, like they're elite pass rushers, but the decline is coming. And I think it's coming sooner than people are thinking, but I'm curious to get your thoughts on that. And again, and we bring this up because, the whole issue with limited practice this week.
Yeah. At the expo, which unfortunately I know you weren't able to be there, but I was tasked with answering the question from Gary of who I thought was overrated at defensive line going into the season. And my answer was Joey Bosa. And not as a result of I simply wanted to go off of previous injury history, which is a safe way to go about. Don't get me wrong. But that, and as we see this true position designation, you're starting to see an infiltration of a lot more names buoying that defensive line 2-3 player tier up so high that you can eliminate Joey Bosa and not feel like the drop off is as significant. Now, to answer your question about when you cut ties or I don't know if there's any value right now. We'll see. Obviously, in hindsight, if you're clairvoyant, you look back at was that week 3? I'm guessing week 2 against Tennessee. Tennessee's offensive line, the matchup was there, made sense. He ends up with a couple sacks, 4 tackles, his double-digit point production. The week 1 against Miami, I didn't expect him to do we didn't know Miami was going to be the best offensive line in football as far as avoiding sacks, which is crazy. That's for another day. But yeah, it's, KC this week, the Bears, the Jets are middle of the road. Then Detroit is a tough matchup. Green Bay is not exactly the easiest. Baltimore has its moments. New England knows how to plan around. And then it's the same thing again. Denver, okay. Vegas. So I don't see any matchups that I'm like, man, if I got to hold on for him because he gets Tennessee again, Washington again, Houston, some of these teams where you're seeing a pressure allowed be worthwhile. So yeah, I don't have him for the reason I just said, but it lends some credence to thinking, if you can sell, what is this? It's not selling high. It's not selling low. It's just selling off name value, which is always high for that. And look at that. Thank you for the kind words, Steve. Yeah, I can't wait to collaborate with you either. Jorge is more than capable. If you're ever looking for someone, I highly encourage you to reach out to Jorge here, and we'd love to have you jump on with us as well. The IDP guys and Fantasy on Frames have a long standing history of, I'd say, friendship and building each other up. So anything I can do to help out, or anything we can ever do, we're on board for sure. Anything else to add on Joey Bosa? Do you want to?
No, I think I spent enough time on Joey Bosa that I
Yeah.
probably want to at this point of the season, but no.
Yeah. That linebacker, Devondre Campbell, that ankle injury is still doubtful. Isaiah McDuffie, next situation. You were hoping that after the bye and everything that he would be ready to roll. What was, I guess, optimistic by me is that he was going to be back, because I did not do anything with Isaiah McDuffie whatsoever. But I'm thrilled to have Quay kind of single-handed by himself again, because he's been fantastic. What else? What else can you say about Demario Davis in terms of some, what I'm going to say is underrated upside? Here's some interesting little tidbits, if you will, on Demario Davis that honestly, you can take it for what it's worth. Him being out of the game tomorrow has some impacts, of course, but he's had a couple bad performances. He had a big day. But despite those down weeks, he's just one of 5 players that has 35 plus tackles, 4 plus quarterback hits, and 2 plus sacks. So is Demario Davis, I didn't put him in that Money or Mirage segment that we get to, but where do you put Demario Davis? Obviously, if he's hurt and he's not playing, he's not going to be on your list, but he always seems to kind of just be right in that, you like the name, you like the upside when I throw out statistics like that, the 35, the 4, the 2, and you realize, okay, but how often are you getting elite production anymore?
One of the things that I loved about Demario Davis, besides his tackle floor that he had when he left the Jets and he came to New Orleans in free agency so many moons ago, was just the high tackle upside. And then slowly but surely, it became, he's blitzing more, he's getting more into the backfield, he's playing more in coverage, he's doing X, Y, and Z. He's becoming a all-around great linebacker for football and for IDP. Mm-hmm. And then this guy, Pete Werner, comes on the scene and basically starts playing like Demario Davis, and Demario Davis is now more restricted to just being more tackle dependent in recent seasons. And so it's one of those things where am I excited to have Demario Davis? I'll always be a fan of Demario Davis. Is he somebody that I'm inserting necessarily as a confident LB2? Not really. If I'm in a league where it's, I'm starting 3 linebackers, he's probably my 3rd. Mm-hmm. And even then, that's kind of a matchup dependent situation, which is unfortunate because of, for how long he's played in the league and how productive he's been for IDP. It sucks. It sucks to talk down about a player that you're a fan of, but it happens to everybody.
Yep. That's pretty much that's my 2 cents on Demario as well. In Baltimore, Marcus Williams, welcome back last week. See you later this week. Hamstring injury, didn't practice, which, so here's the thing. I expected that to be, hey, this is going to be good news for Kyle Hamilton. Marcus Williams can stay back, let Kyle Hamilton play even more in the box. Maybe with the lack of pass rushers in Baltimore, we'll see Kyle Hamilton blitz some more, which was what elevated and supported that huge week that he had, which kind of elevating his overall year, which, is good, but it's not really good because it's masking the inadequacy that he's been. But last week was not fair because he got ejected. And so it's not like he should have been ejected, and he should have probably be suspended. That was it was nasty. I'm not a fan of that. But so far he hasn't received any punishment other than a fine and the ejection, which is big. But what do you think the effects ancillary of Marcus Williams being gone? Do you see Kyle Hamilton playing more slot, and then the more the occasional deep snap, or do you think they're gonna just plug and play? Maybe Geno Stone gets more playing time again, and they leave Kyle Hamilton up front just to, give concussions left and right to people.
So no on the last part. This is not Greg Williams calling the defense in Baltimore who tells you to take out opposing teams' players.
Yeah.
Come
Sure
on,
that?
you remember that scandal back in the day in New Orleans with Greg Williams and how he was basically saying to target players? Yeah.
Because he was the Rams defensive coordinator right afterwards. He was here in St. Louis.
Oh, there you go.
I was rooting for that. I was like, head hunt. Let's go. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Take out their knees, not their head. Jeez.
There you go. They can get a. Although, as somebody who's suffering a knee injury, I don't know if I like the sound of that anymore. But anyhow, I digress. Look, we saw Geno Stone play 30% of the box snaps. I'm curious as to how much of that is attributed to when Kyle Hamilton got ejected. Therefore, they had to make some defensive alignment shifts.
Yeah.
So that notwithstanding, Kyle Hamilton has had a lot of snaps in the box. So I would assume, barring any suspension, now you should see Kyle Hamilton resume that role. Sans headhunting.
Okay. We'll keep the headhunting out of the conversation. I say that tongue in cheek. Of course, people know I'm joking. In Buffalo, Ed Oliver, he has a big toe, I'm guessing, because he's a big man. So when he injures his toe and he's didn't practice, and there's a good chance that they say he's going to miss this week, that's something to take note of. Of course, Ed Oliver was Hollywood's sack lunch player last week and did not return value. In New England, Josh Uche injured his foot, did not practice, not looking optimistic for this week. New England was already, man, you want to talk about lack of pass rush. This is big news because not only is it Josh Uche. I mean, hell, if you look at their practice report, holy hell, it is and New England always does this. They always put people as questionable and everything. That's just the Belichick way. But it's 20 people deep. It's every person I can possibly see. It's like there's 7 offensive linemen. There's 6 defensive linemen. There's safeties. Everybody's questionable. Everybody's limited. A couple people didn't practice, but Josh Uche and Keon White both did not practice. Keon White with the concussion. I know. I'm wondering.
I'm scrolling through right now, and Jesus,
I'm telling you. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're not joking.
No, I don't joke around about injury report lists. Or hey, if there's one thing I don't joke around, it's that and headhunting with Greg Williams. Those two things I refuse to joke around with. But makes me wonder: is Buffalo just going to? I mean, that should be a little bit extra time for Josh Allen. Not that we're going to talk some offense or anything, but gotta look at that too. Very interesting. Let's not talk too much about that. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, it's going to be a Josh Allen day if you're using the previous week's metrics as an example of what you can project going forward, which, kind of makes a little bit of sense.
Mm-hmm.
The highest pressure rate of any edge defender per PFF was Anthony Jennings of 5.3%.
Yowzers.
The highest win rate, again, of per PFF, Anthony Jennings, 10.5%.
Good.
Josh Uche, I take that back. Josh Uche had 9.1% pressure rate, but like you said, questionable. Yeah, so not looking too good for that defensive line.
No.
Too much statute on, man.
We'll talk about, I know. And this will lead into, at a later time, another player on the defensive side for New England that we will get to in a minute. Carolina Panthers, Jeremy Chinn, the entire week leading up to these, to really yesterday, was the talk of trade. Carolina Panthers, maybe it might be one of the biggest tradable assets on the team is Jeremy Chinn, maybe Brian Burns as well. But Jeremy Chinn, no. Philadelphia Eagles. There was a laundry list of teams. I'm not going to go through each one of them. It was pretty much everybody that has a lack of, linebacker and any safety help. But Jeremy Chinn has I didn't even hear anything about this personally. Like, I'm sure it probably happened and I was just oblivious because I like to try to put blinders on when it comes to Jeremy Chin bad news. But quad injury, serious quad injury. He could miss up to 6 weeks. Jeremy Chin has been droppable. I keep holding on because I just don't want to buy in. I don't want to believe it. So I'm glad that, anybody listening to me probably didn't draft him anyway, and you didn't take my bad advice, but it's move on time by Jeremy Chin. It's been fun, my friend. Sorry.
And like his trade value is completely tanked. Like nobody's trading for him, and 6 weeks is an estimate. And when they're like serious quad injury, but only 6 weeks, I'm like, get the hell out of here. That's not even a thing.
Yeah, sucks. And your shirt that you're wearing, King's Classic IDP.
That's
right.
You won last week. I saw.
Well, I did win. Yeah, that's. I was not going to go with the win. That's they've come. Finally, it's nice that I have some a little bit of health on my side. Not that anybody else hasn't faced injuries. We all do, but losing your first couple picks is not the great way to start the season off.
So I'm actually proud of myself today for a couple of reasons. IDP Fantasy League related. Let me just little sidetrack before we get going into Money and Mirage. So this week I've been really good. I have been sleeping a whole night. Normally I'm very streaky with my sleeping patterns throughout the night, but Monday, Tuesday, I went to bed like around 11. I woke up around 6:45, 7, which is like my usual time. And I'm like, all right, I'm feeling good. This is great. This morning I wake up and I'm like, man, I am refreshed. I'm good to go. Alexa, what time is it? 3:15. And I'm like,
shit.
I know, because Sleeper has conditioned me. Because normally that's when their waivers roll around. And I know you checked me adding somebody into the Dynasty League because I saw at 4:30 or 5:30 Eastern your icon pop up next to seeing my Jorge made a transaction thing. So I was up early, and I actually went into all of my MFL IDP leagues and actually put claims in because I realized I was missing some players. And I'm proud of myself because I normally cut it super close on MFL, which one of the is the King's Classic. So yeah. So pat on the back for being responsible setting your lineups, Jorge. There you go. That's myself.
Well, who'd you get? Somebody worth the shit?
Well, now you're putting me on the spot here. Now I have to actually go find.
It was like it wasn't that long ago, just a couple hours ago.
A couple hours, like 3 o'clock in the morning, a couple hours ago. Just
I feel you. It's not that big of a deal. I just was going in to check because King's Classic, I have been sitting on Jeremy Chin, drafted him. I will be letting him go soon. I am, as we talk, scrolling through the laundry list of names of nobody's on this list because 14-team league IDP is gross. I'll tell you a name that I'm not going to add. That'd be Grover Stewart. Grover Stewart suspended 6 games for a PED violation. I don't think that was, outside of deep defensive tackle leagues, Grover Stewart wasn't necessarily stemming, but there's ancillary effects of what his effect has multiple layers. Number one, does it hurt DeForest Buckner? Sure, it doesn't help. Does it hurt Kwity Paye? Sure, it doesn't help. But realistically, what it does is it decreases some of Zaire Franklin's tackle, just like his gap responsibilities, or not necessarily gap responsibilities, but visible gaps and visibility of the ball carrier, which is important. You know that. Anytime you can get pressure and double teams and eliminating offensive players from getting to that second level, you leave Zaire Franklin free, and or Shaq Leonard. We're not really talking about him, but
so you need to shoot the gap.
Hey. Yeah, very, very good.
Hold on. I have a thing. 1 second. Hold on. There we go. That's a little late, but you get, thought that counts.
Just in time for Bob Harris in the chat to hear our dynamite drops. So in case you're wondering where we get these from, amazing production crew we have behind the scenes at Fantasy and Frames. It's a countless amount of people working nonstop to make sure you're getting the absolute best when it comes to.
you say that, but our producer, who's in the YouTube chat, is not actually producing behind the scenes. So there's
Well,
only so much I can do, Nate. I'm sorry, but I
you're
will work.
doing great, my
Hey,
friend.
Bob
You're
likes
doing
it.
great.
Bob loves the rim shot drop. There we go.
I know he does.
Um,
Bob has the nicest thing to say about you, us, and everybody. And
Bob's awesome.
you can find him pretty much everywhere, but it's Football Diehards on Sirius XM. I think Monday night he said he's a 3-hour show, and then Thursdays, and then Saturday morning. I know he has Football Diehard podcast stream where he will answer all your start sit questions. I could probably just say he's Monday through Sunday in some capacity somewhere saying hello. Or
And
hey,
I'll say this, just taking it a step further. Bob has been super generous, allowing a lot of people from Fantasy and Frames to come on his shows and to talk shop with them, and we couldn't be more appreciative of all the support you've given us here. So thank you, Bob.
yep, very much so. His presence on the Fantasy and Frame shows is not a mirage. He is here.
He is
He
here.
has been money for his countless hours of incredible information he provides. So where we know Bob Harris is a money play for your fantasy football content, I have a couple questions about some IDP waiver wire activity. Are they going to be money or mirage? And the first place I want to start is in Houston. A one Blake Cashman, PFF's, darling, if you will, who had 9 tackles in week 5, 15 total tackles in week 6, an 18.3 tackle percent or tackle efficiency, which, by the way, is elite. It's fantastic. Is he money or is he mirage? Where I want to get your 2 cents on Blake Cashman going forward. And obviously, this takes into effect. We're not talking one linebacker. We're talking more deep leagues where you start 2 or 3. The people probably listening to this are somewhat degenerates like ourselves, and they play in quite a bit. So, money, mirage, Blake Cashman, start us off.
He's just been so damn good, and you said it, like PFF, they grade out players, all the players who play. Wow, shocking.
Very shocking.
But they've just been grading him so highly. You mentioned the tackle totals coming off of a great double-digit performance in week 6. My concern is Denzel Perryman, who they're working back into rotation, who, when he was healthy, saw majority of the snaps, was the every down linebacker. It was Denzel Perryman and insert either Christian Harris or, and then Perryman went down, and then it was Harris and To'o, and then everybody. So that LB2 spot is concerning because you don't know who exactly is going to assert themselves. I would assume when Perryman comes back, it's him and Cashman, which is great, right? I mean, you have 2 viable linebackers there for the Houston Texans. Is he money? He's money as an LB2. I think he's a mirage if you're thinking he's going to be LB1 because Perryman is waiting in the wings to come back to more of a full-time role.
Yeah, and I agree with this statement because I don't know who. And many people called, and I saw this, and I had to admit, I kind of got a little panicked going into the game when I saw the word healthy scratch for Denzel Perryman, because that just screams, oh man, healthy scratch, move down. He's the LB3 behind Tua and Blake Cashman. Will he be down in the Christian Harris of dumpster diving linebackers for Houston that don't get playing time? And I don't think that's the case because he had a club on his hand, and they didn't want to use that,
right?
Use him on the field. The Houston Texans linebackers are heavily targeted to the point where over the last couple of weeks, Blake Cashman is the most targeted linebacker in all of football. He's done really well with that in opportunity too, which makes me think he's going to stay on the field. I don't think it's going to be a 100% Perryman, 80% Cashman, 20, 30, 40% Tua. I think he's going to split more time than we like, and that's why he's a mirage to me. And I hope I'm wrong for his sake because he's a really, really good player, and I'd like to see him get some more opportunity. Sucks that I don't want to see Denzel Perryman return. I like to see those 2 youngsters play,
right.
My opinion, quite a bit more. But you know, that's where if you've had Blake Cashman, trust me, you've got your value for days over the last couple weeks if you started them.
Absolutely. And it kind of sucks because, when he was in New York, he didn't get enough opportunities just because of the linebackers in front of him, like Quincy Williams and
Mm-hmm.
CJ Mosley. And then, he had some bright spots here and there. And then, like you said, be grateful for what you got out of him if you had him this week in your rosters. But yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. But what's maybe fortunate is that this next linebacker is someone who I think still is decently available in some leagues right now. You could potentially go out and get this gentleman, and he's the linebacker too in Tennessee. Is not Monty Rice, who at the beginning of the season many people thought it would be. It's Jack Gibbons, who over the past 3 weeks has put up 29 total tackles. His I'd say value has been tied to his playing time, which unfortunately, his snap share did drop below 70% for the first time since week 3. But is that a product of just gameplay, or is that usage going forward? Or are these things something that we should play into him being a mirage in your eyes? Or are these simply a mirage of snap shares that could indicate that he is money going forward?
I agree with the mirage of snap shares. Look, when we say below 70, I mean, he was like at 69, right?
Yeah.
But he had been so used to like 80, 83, 85 or 85, 83, one of the two.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was more of a situation of just adapting to game script to a certain degree. At the end of the day, though, you mentioned it. Monty Rice isn't coming and taking Jack Gibbons' job at this point. He's just been too productive for IDP purposes. He's reaching that third LB spot in terms of consistency. We joked about it, and it's a shame Hollywood's not here yet, being the Tennessee Titans fan here. But all of us have joked like the linebacking situation for Tennessee heading into the season sucks. I mean, we liked Alshire because we liked his performance in San Francisco when he was healthy. He was going to get the opportunity to be the lead linebacker there, and then it was like insert name next to him, and then enter Jack Gibbons, who's just been playing lights out. So I think he's a money play. I'm not too concerned about the snap percentage just because who else is going to come and take his spot, and I don't think there's anybody on that roster right now who will.
No. And like I said, opportunity, and he's making the most of it in regards to, if you look at overall tackle grades. And I know that's such a generic, basic thing to look at, but a linebacker's sole responsibility when on the field is just making tackles. And again, I know that sounds pedestrian in analysis, but he's the 13th ranked linebacker in the NFL right now in tackle grade. So whereas you stay on the field like with running backs, if you can't pass block, eventually there's a good chance that you will, number one, be taken off the field in passing downs and or eventually lose snaps. The same thing can apply if you miss tackles, unless you're Jeremy Chin for a couple of years, because he was missing hella tackles and they still kept him. But he was making hella plays also. So
a lot of Jeremy Chin hate. The dude just had a major knee injury, and it's like, go to hell, Jeremy Chin.
Hey, how dare you? The star of SIU Carbondale.
Yeah, I took a try for not having faith in Jeremy Chin. So
I know the next player is one who did not go to SIU Carbondale. He is lined up opposite, or well, at least somewhat opposite, or next to one of the best defensive players of our generation. But unfortunately, it hasn't always led to the most consistent analytics or metrics or underlying stats. This person had a 9.1% win rate on Sunday versus Arizona, and yet he had a 15.2% pressure rate. So might not be able to beat his defender, but luckily the Josh Dobbs ran towards him or into him or enough to create a pressure. In fact, it was actually his counterpart, Michael Hope, who outperformed this person. This is Byron Young. Byron Young has been, he's been a person, I will tell you this. I thought he's a mirage the entire time. I didn't trust his metrics going in. He's spotty at best. And I just don't like, I hadn't seen the ceiling. And then, of course, every time that I say that, he puts up a good week. Where are you at with Byron Young?
You know how you just made a joke about Josh Dobbs just running into Byron Young and he just happens to fall into a sack or a good fantasy production?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where I'm at. I think it is a mirage, and it's unfortunate because Hope is putting in so much time, so much work in pressure rate and beating his beating his
Opponent?
opponent. There you go. Thank
Yeah.
you. Like, for example, week 6 against Arizona, he had a win rate of 25% compared to Byron Young's 9.1. Byron Young, you said, had a 15.2% pressure rate. Hoke had a 31.3. It's almost like Hoke is like setting them up to like run the other way. Oh, I'm going to run the other way right into Byron Young, who falls on me and gets a sack. And then there you go. I get fantasy production. And it's one of those things where it's like you see the pressure rate going in Hoke's way, and you're just like, man, just come this way. Let me tackle you to the ground and pad my statistics. But he's a mirage to me, despite the streaky performances. He's just being outproduced by his counterpart, and it's purely circumstantial, I think.
Now, in like dynasty formats, I'm much higher on Byron Young, just because even going into the season, that was the one thing we talked about is, are there any rookie defensive linemen that had a landing spot that was advantageous? And I think this was an advantageous landing spot for them or for him, but I just don't think it's there yet, at least not yet. And this is such, like we've said, such a deep position. You can find options. So he's what I would consider just a streamable option going forward against the right matchups. Moving on from that is another person who I think, you know what? I mean, he damn near might as well be in that same clumping of people. Same division, similar situation in that he's now had 3 weeks in a row with the sack. Last week, he had a higher pass rush win rate and pressure rate than his counterpart on his own team. Is this specific defensive lineman edge rusher in Seattle someone we should start paying attention to? That is Boye Mafe. Money and Mirage.
I think it's a mirage. I like Uchenna Nwosu's track record, his history in putting up high performing weeks as a DL2, more comfortably as a DL3. Mafe, what is this, his second or third year in the season, is just now starting to hit his strides, quote unquote, hit his stride. I would still want Nwosu over him, but he had a good week, but that's as far as I want to read into that situation for him so far.
Yeah, I like Boye Mafe, the player. I really like that. There of the 22 draft class edge rushers, he's my second favorite behind Aiden Hutchinson. I like him better than Drake Jackson. Jermaine Johnson's coming along slowly. I like David Ajabo, but he's still early. If you look at ESPN's pass rush win rate, Mafe ranks a lot higher. So that's what I have a hard time is all the metrics say yes. And then it seems like when I watch, I don't see it. So it's like, am I missing? What am I missing? And I'm far from one of the, a tape bro. Let me not try to convince you otherwise and say that I study each tape and I know pass rush as well as anybody. But I do see him at times. I mean, granted, it's limited, but it just hasn't popped out. And I want to see him, continue to evolve as a player. And I just don't want him to evolve on my fantasy team right now. I'll let him do that, So, but as Steve said, he has the highest win rate in the NFL at 33%. Yeah, and that's true. He does. If you look at like I was saying with ESPN's pass rush win rate too, the metrics are there. The metrics back it up. And I don't know what I'm missing when I watch. And so maybe I need to tune in a little bit closer. Also,
Do you know what you're missing?
Well, I'm missing the fact that I think that it's a good sample size of matchups too, in that it's Carolina, who they had issues across the offensive line. The Giants had issues across the offensive line. And yet the two other games, both Cincinnati and the Rams, he was held pretty much at bay. I just don't want to blame it on opponents. That's just such a cheap.
No, you're not. But
Yeah.
you know what you're missing with Mafe? Get over the past 2 seasons, okay? Last year and so far this year. What do you think his highest solo tackle number is for in a game?
I don't really pay. I hate to say I don't care about that because if I'm looking at the edge rushers, but I'm interested to hear the answer.
4. And he's done that twice. So you say you don't like to look at the tackle numbers. I look at tackle numbers for an edge rusher to kind of help me establish some type of basic floor because sacks they're only so predictable with pressure rates and win weights. Like there's only so much. We just talked about this. Hoped and Byron Young, pressure rate, sack win rate high, not getting the sack reduction. So similar situation with Mafe. Here it's the tackle floor is just not there, and yeah. So sometimes I think sometimes we get all of us we kind of have to get into a situation where we have to like restrain ourselves from letting these advanced metrics get in the way of like just saying, okay, well, so-and-so is getting this snap share and target share and route participation and blah, 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 blah. If we're talking offense and win weights, pressure weights and tackle efficiencies, at the end of the day, what does that help translate into for fantasy purposes and there has to be some kind of disconnect there or some type of connect there to make a decision.
Yeah. The good news is both the players, pretty much most of the players so far we've talked about are young and continuing to ascend. And so it's not like the last thing I want anything to come across from this is that we're shitting on these players. Far from that. It's matter really of like, do you feel comfortable starting this person
for fantasy
as a DL2/3? And I haven't got to that point yet. How about Bradley Chubb? Here we're talking about an interesting situation in Miami where it's like a domino effect. When Jalen Phillips doesn't play, then Van Ginkel moves to the edge more. It allows David Long to play more. Bradley Chubb stays consistent. He's been the one consistent, at least from a playing time standpoint. But when it comes to Bradley Chubb, what we've seen the snap percentage decrease. And I think that's sometimes a result of a rotation, which is always an ideal scenario, and blowouts and a lot of factors that happen when you're the Miami Dolphins is you win by 70 or you win by 50 points or you win by 30, you're going to see a snap percentage reduction. But in terms of tackle volume, he's remained consistent. So even, that's the positive. You don't want to see the completely bottom drop out. But like I said, the solo to assist department is excellent. Tackle for loss, quarterback hit metrics. Is this a product of a good system with Christian Wilkins and good pressure across the other side, whereas he could be a money play? Or is this simply a mirage because teams are forced to pass so much more that we're just seeing him pin his ears back and get the upside play as a result?
This is 100% situation.
Okay.
You look at his time in Denver. Let's go back to his rookie year. Bradley Chubb, Von Miller, like it had been until Chase Young, Montez Sweat that you had seen a tandem of linebackers, a rookie and an established veteran, wreak so much havoc against opposing offenses, and for fantasy purposes, both be viable edge rushers on the same team. Okay. Von Miller gets traded away to Los Angeles. Bradley Chubb deals with his share of injuries. Things just aren't working out in Denver. He comes to Miami, and he's lining up against Jalen Phillips, even though it's Van Ginkel who's been playing lights out in Phillips' absence. You have Christian Wilkins, in the middle. This is money. This is money again, and I go back to what I was talking about with Mafe in regards for fantasy purposes. His tackle floor, you know, round 4 tackles a game average. Like, okay, now I'm liking that. Now you're establishing a higher floor for an edge rusher or a defensive lineman.
Mm-hmm.
Just and again, I'm speaking from this from like a fantasy perspective, not so much a, just
All I care about.
right. It just makes too much sense. Just the production's there. The one-on-one matchups are there. I'm actually very happy just for fantasy managers who've like kept the faith with Bradley Chubb, because there are a lot of us who are like, screw this, I'm out. I've been out. There's no point. Oh, he's going to Miami. Whoop-de-doo. Okay, he's Vic Fangio is going to be reuniting with him. Oh, whoop-de-doo, and then boom, we've seen this solid production this year. So hopefully people have picked him up because of it, or they never lost faith. Which kudos to you. Either way, people who have him on their rosters, they should be pretty happy that they have him.
Yeah, in hindsight, I would rather, obviously at this point in the season, I would rather have had Bradley Chubb over my heavy shares of Jalen Phillips. But unfortunately, I don't get to play, hindsight's 2020 with my fantasy teams go back. But what we can do is we can look forward to week 7, and we can kind of find some players that we may want to play outside or, fade because they have bad matchups. But before we get to that, I want to answer Anthony's question. He says, hey guys, always appreciate the insight. Is Nakobe Dean getting more snaps this week? Should I start him in any 3 IDP league? So basically, is he a top 36 play, assuming it's 12-team league, maybe top 30? What do you think, Jorge? He comes back last week. Obviously, we assumed, I assumed at least, there was going to be a rotation of sorts to get started. A wonky matchup at best against the Jets. I won't think that the matchup had a ton to do with everything. But what we saw is we saw Nakobe Dean come in and play basically 50% of the snaps, just under.
All right.
Do we expect that same rotation? Do we expect him to fill a more full-time role? And if that's the case, is he going to be in, I want to hear, so 12-team. So top 36 pick for you, Jorge.
Nope. Look, you mentioned it. We look at total defensive snap share, 55.4% for Morrow, 49.2% for Dean. I need better separation. I need Zach Cunningham 75% or higher, and I need to see that in an every down role before I even think about putting him as a top 36 linebacker. I don't want somebody who's going to be off the field on 3rd and 4th down. So, and I'm not saying that he won't get there. Time will tell. There's a look. A lot of us in IDP circles, we were very high on Nakobe Dean coming out of Georgia. Missed most of his rookie year. Has missed most of this year. But with the hype, right? Oh, he's coming from Georgia. Oh, he was so dominant in Georgia. Oh, well, he's gonna do it because who else do we have? And I'm like, well, you got somebody who's producing, but whatever. A lot of hype, not a lot of on-field excitement. Therefore, for fantasy purposes, I need to see it. I honestly, I would love to know who you have at linebacker on your waiver wire, because I bet you I could find somebody that would probably be a better start or roster, somebody better to roster than Nakobe Dean at this point.
Yeah, and that's fair. That's fair. Don't get me wrong. The matchup screams against Miami. So, hey, this is a potential, as they say, slobber knocker and or heavyweight battle. But the Dolphins haven't exactly been the most generous team to linebackers as a whole. So while it might be a good offensive matchup, good for maybe the safeties in this game as well, I don't necessarily think it's going to be quite the Nakobe Dean. But this is definitely a hold for Nakobe Dean going forward, because as soon as they start, getting him back to a full-time role, we saw it in limited snaps on a per snap basis, N'Kobe Dean was one of the more productive players in the NFL. So I think that given time, by that, maybe by playoff time, I'd be interested to see if we start having that conversation. I still have a hard time thinking about top 36 overall, but maybe send us over like the list of the people that you would have available at Jorge B. Edwards, at Nate Markham, or send over, put in the chat here, whatever you need to do. Let's get back to our plays and fades of the week. Some people that were higher on or lower on. I'll begin with my play of the week, someone that I typically have been lower on, but I'm moving him up in my rankings and I'm feeling comfortable starting him, is Trayvon Walker, number 1 overall pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars against the New Orleans Saints tomorrow night, or tonight if you're listening tomorrow. Yeah, if you're listening on Thursday, the game's tonight. If you're listening after Thursday, maybe you should have been listening to this or glad you didn't hear this. Whichever one of those potential outcomes it's going to be. I'm banking on it's going to be I wish I had thought about this, because Ryan Ramczyk left week 6. What they did is they slid Cesar Ruiz from right guard to right tackle to see his first ever snaps at right tackle after signing him to a pretty decent extension. Thought it was fitting that he would, of course, move to right tackle for the first time. And the plan for him is to man the right side. And I will tell you, he had a very aggressive approach at tackle when watching, which I think that it's rather interesting, because I don't know if against Trayvon Walker that's going to be the most advantageous scenario. So I think Trayvon Walker can create enough pressure that I believe that in the backfield we will see a continuation of the sacks that he's been putting up, slow and sure. The one thing that typically I would look at, and I'd say, oh man, I hate seeing it, is I hate seeing when outside linebackers are dropped back into coverage, because typically they're not usually going to produce much in the way of fantasy output, contrary to Trayvon Walker. In college, even going into the pros, he has demonstrated some decent ball skills. I'm not asking him to pick off a pass. I'm not asking him to have tons of pass defenses, but what I think he could do is he could actually have plenty of short to intermediate tackles and or maybe the occasional pass breakup, because Derek Carr has the second highest percentage of check down passes. And we're going to see plenty of work there. The likelihood that Trayvon Walker does, Jorge, what you mentioned you like to see, which is put up a good tackle floor in combination with some pressure / quarterback hit sack metrics that will amplify that. So I'm telling you, I don't know how high I want to go with Trayvon Walker. I'm not going to say he's going to be in my DL1 conversation, but he's pushing that back in DL2 right now for me. And I'm kind of liking it.
Nice.
How about you? Who are you playing this week?
So I wrote about him in the our IDP waiver wire ads for week 7, which you can go over to fantasyandframes.com and check that out, as well as all of our other IDP content, offensive, defensive, special teams content, as well as our rankings. Jelani Tavai, linebacker, New England Patriots, especially this week going against the Baltimore Ravens, per RPO Football. Shout out to Master IDP, aka Leo. Baltimore has allowed the most tackles to the linebacker position on the season. Shout out to Ryan Seitzman and all the great work he does over at IDP Guru. Baltimore has led the second most points per game to linebackers. Tavai leads all linebackers in New England this season in solo tackles. What's really impressive is Juwan Bentley has, on a snap percentage basis, been on the field more than Tavai. Yet he only has 3 more tackles in the same amount of time that they've both been playing this season. So I'm really liking it. Really liking the upward trajectory. If you're a Patriots fan, you're not liking the downward trajectory of how the team is playing. So he's definitely somebody who benefits from a matchup this week. 1, 2, the fact that volume is going to be on their side more often than not. So yeah, I'm rolling with Tavai this week, and it's so weird, man, because I can't remember the last time I told you, man, lock in this linebacker for the New England Patriots. They're going to get you a lot of tackles. It's more like give me give me Matt Judon, and that's
Yeah.
Judon and Kyle Duggar, and that's it. Avoid everything at all costs. And Tavai has just been kind of breaking the mold there. Look, you want to see the snap numbers go up, but I think they will, given the efficiency and the production he's had thus far. So, and most importantly, efficiency, the production. That's what it really comes down to. It's the production and the competition for tackles.
Yeah, I really want to see. The one thing that surprised me is when Josh Uche as well as Keon White both kind of left the game. We saw Tavai played more on the edge than at inside linebacker. And that was one of the things, like him bouncing around, is they had this opportunity for Marte Mapu to play a more significant role, and they didn't. And this is not anything on Tavai as much as it is, why could I have not seen Marte Mapu more? Because I figured he would be a really good versatile player. I don't think he's going to have any effect, but is Tavai better when he has a good blend of both inside snaps as well as edge rush snaps, or is that something? Because last week he proved he could do both. You think there's some even increased value in that?
So from like a real football person, yeah, give me the guy with versatility who can make plays. I need to look over his. Well, I'll just pull it up right now. Give me 1 second while you're talking about that. My initial thought is I kind of want him playing more inside, given the matchup against Baltimore. Man, he did play very well in coverage too, but
yeah,
it's really important. What's really impressive here, and not so much impressive, is I take that back. I rather have him in an inside role because we talk about in coverage when targeted last week. He only allowed a 39.6% NFL passer rating. So quarterbacks are not exactly going to be wanting to just target somebody who's going to shut them down from a passing perspective. So I don't know how much he would actually get targeted as a coverage linebacker. So therefore, I think I would want him to have more opportunities at inside in that regard.
Well, let's just cross our fingers then that both Uche and Keon White come back strong this week and keep Tavai in that interior role, because that's where I like him a lot too. I don't like not knowing what role a person's going to have. And that infuriates me. And here I am thinking I'm moving Tavai up as we talked, and then just starting to think of the inside. I was like, is Baltimore, do you think they'll target him from an outside linebacker, more of the edge, or are they going to blitz Tavai? Are they going to let him kind of do both? Belichick's smart in terms of utilizing people to the best of their abilities. And Tavai's best ability is exactly how you explained him. So I am still excited to watch him play. That's all I can say 100%. Who are you not excited to watch play? Or, well, who do you not want to play?
So I preface this by saying this isn't a case of ability or availability. It's a case of opportunity. Okay. And he's been playing lights out the past couple weeks, and that's AJ Epineza. We saw Gregory Rousseau return to action against the Giants. And what did he do? He blew every other edge rusher out of the water in total defensive snap share. We saw him have a win rate of 17.2%, a pressure rate of 20.7%. We saw then the next highest person is in total snap share was Leonard Floyd, followed by the ascending Von Miller in snap share. Then you had Epineza. Now, that being the case, Epineza got a sack. His win rate was 30%. His pressure rate was 40%, albeit on only 27% of total snaps. So he definitely has that opportunity. But what have we learned about the Buffalo Bills and their defensive line? Especially, let's go back to last year when Von Miller was there and Gregory Rousseau was there, and they were both healthy. That, again, Very rare you find those tandems that you can both start for fantasy. They both fed off each other. They both commanded one-on-one matchups, with especially with the interior defensive linemen helping to create that. But you saw some stability there. Okay, you go back the years before then, and you saw what's the thing we knocked Buffalo for? Having a rotation along the defensive line. You never know. They were basically the Philadelphia Eagles before they were
Right.
how the Philadelphia Eagles are now. My concern is that Epineza falls into that rotational role again, which, for a real football perspective, if I'm McDermott, the head coach, I'm ecstatic. Give me this guy who I know could be a starter on any other team in the league and be a productive one, come in as a rotational role. I think as Rousseau and Von Miller get up to where they are, and let's not even forget about Floyd, who he's there. They brought him over as a free agent. They want him to be there. They want him incorporated in there. It makes the situation very messy opposite of Rousseau. And I just think the odd man out here is Epineza, just because you saw the snap share from Floyd. You see the increasing snap share from Von Miller, who they're dying to get back to being the full-time starter. And somebody's got to be the odd man out this week. And I think it's going to be AJ Epineza.
And that's fair. And that's a fair way to establish. Like, if Epineza was your insert DL1 that you don't want to take out, the start your stud approach, then you're not going to, who's the odd man out might be Josh Sweat type situation where you're like, dang it, I hate to even, or Hassan Reddick after week 2, where you go, I think I need to start Reddick. I want to, but I'm still a little concerned. But the pivot isn't as easy, if that makes sense. Like Epineza, moving off from Epineza is easy for me. I go, okay, yeah, I don't really care if I don't start him or not. So that makes, despite the 30% win rate, despite the fact that we know Buffalo can be downright dirty. But no, I like that a lot. I like even the pride of my Southern Illinois, AJ Epineza. But
did he go to Southern? Did he go to Carbondale? Is that?
No, he went to high school in Edwardsville.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Right across the way. A friend of mine, she was one of his teachers, I guess. Doesn't really matter. It has nothing to do with anything. I'll tell you who. Fun fact. You know, another fun fact is I'm not starting Jadeveon Clowney. That's fun fact. Jadeveon Clowney, I will say, it has been a fun ride. Jadeveon Clowney, 29 pressures, just absolutely dynamite on the season. Something I never expected. Get rid of that, run stopper moniker type scenario. I was talking to Bob Harris earlier, and he asked about IDP, and I mentioned Jadeveon Clowney's name because I wanted to bring light to him before I brought darkness and said, don't start him, because he's going up against the Detroit Lions and Penei Sewell. Penei Sewell has been the best offensive lineman, at least as far as shutting down pass rush and preventing sacks. 525 consecutive pass plays now without allowing a sack. I normally would say I'm not a betting man. That's a lie. I'm a betting man. So I'm betting against a person of Jadeveon Clowney's amazing athletic ability. But I'm going to go ahead and say, like with Epineza, I don't have a hard time sitting Jadeveon Clowney in a matchup like this. It ain't good. So those are the plays. Those are our fades. I do know that Hollywood would have some amazing ones, but I'll just start off with the one thing he did leave us. Gave us a little nugget because he wants to be involved in the sack lunch segment, because as of last week going in, his Ed Oliver did not get the sack. Your Trey Hendrickson did get one, and my Max Crosby got half a one, bringing the season total to 3 wins or 3 weeks positive for me and 2 weeks positive for you and Hollywood.
And I'll point out,
I am 4 weeks.
I have missed a lot of games, a lot of episodes. So I'm catching up.
That is correct. Exactly. And so we go into this week. Hollywood is going to take Montez Sweat, defensive end Washington Commanders against the New York Giants in a matchup that is just savory, wonderful. The Giants are horrendous. The one interesting point, and I don't think it's going to matter too much, Montez Sweat did suffer a thumb injury last week. He should play, but for my sake, I hope he doesn't, because no takesies backsies, Hollywood. Sorry, you're stuck with Montez Sweat. Jorge,
Yo,
who are you taking this week for your sack lunch?
I don't know his first name, but Two Hill is his last name, and he actually came on in relief of Montez Sweat and actually played really damn well. A couple sacks, I believe, or at least a sack and a half. Versus the Falcons. But I'm going to stay in Washington. I'm going to go Chase Young over the past 4 games. He leads the team by far in total pressures with 24, going against the Giants offensive line that are now looking to replace the replacement at left tackle of Joshua Izudu, who I don't know if you saw during Sunday Night Football. He had some weird foot injury, and the next thing you know, he's being carted off. And I'm not trying to gross people out, but there was something really gross about that foot, and they had it zoomed in. The camera had it zoomed in on the foot for a second, and then they quickly shifted away. And I'm like, oh my god, was there a bone sticking out? What's going on? I don't. It probably wasn't, but it looked really funky. Point is, he's on IR. Okay, so now the New York Giants are looking and signing people from other teams' practice squads, like Tyree Phillips, who was actually a former Giant, who they just got off of the Eagles practice squad. Insert name from Atlanta's practice squad. By the way, going back to Tyree Phillips for a second,
did they just bring Justin Pugh back last week off his couch?
But off the couch, but he was playing guard. He wasn't playing left hand. So going back to Tyree Phillips, and the only reason why I'm bringing this up is I looked pretty hard to find stats on him, and I could not find any. So maybe that is a little telling of the type of matchup Chase Young is going to be going against. Now, I will say this for Chase Young. The total pressures have been great. 2 sacks, according to PFF, to show for it, not so great. But look at the people that he's going to be potentially going up against. Mm-hmm. I think Chase Young is due for a full sack this week. So totally stamp of approval. Chase Young, go Commanders.
I'm right there with you. I think that matchup, anytime I can get it, I'm going to. In fact, actually, you know what? I'm going to stay in the same game for mine. In fact, am I? The hell am I taking? I am. We actually, all 3 of us. I didn't even think of that. All 3 of us have this game. This would be one we need to definitely watch. I took the opposite side of the ball. I went with the New York Giants side against a Washington Commanders team that has, let's say, put it this way, Sam Howell holds the ball quite a bit. I like Sam Howell a lot this year, and I'm excited to watch his growth. But he does hold the ball, and that offensive line, as we talked earlier about Calais Campbell. If you mentioned Calais Campbell is a good matchup against Andrew Wiley and is that Pete Cosme? Is that his name?
Cosme. Yeah.
Cosme.
So it's actually kind of like a sad story. So Charles Leno is actually one of the starting tackle, one of the starting tackles for the Commanders. Had a last minute inactive due to a very
family emergency,
sad family situation that we won't get into. So he actually did not play, but he should be back this week. He was at practice today. But anyhow, back to what you're saying.
Anyhow, we did see the matchup that Calais Campbell exploited was on stunts to the inside. And that's one area that maybe Kayvon Thibodeau's win rate might not be anything to write home about. We've talked ad nauseum about Kayvon Thibodeau and how that dichotomy of certain metrics don't line up with his sacks. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and err on the side of caution in that, is that the right way to say it? No, I'm just going to say the Washington Commanders suck at offensive line, and they allow a ton of sacks, and that seems like an easy area to pick on. And that's pretty much the only justification I need, because why the hell not? Why not? If it's worked for 6 weeks, it should probably work for 7. And something tells me it's about the only thing. So, yeah. Oh, well, also, I'm sorry. Kayvon Thibodeau has destroyed the Commanders in his career spanning 2 games. In those 2 games, 16 tackles, 2 sacks, and a touchdown in 2 games against the Commanders. So, Kayvon Thibodeau, come on down. Jorge, we can sign off. It has been another wonderful week of Shoot the Gap. I thank you, everybody, for listening, chiming in. If you're listening to this at a later time, obviously, if you have any questions or anything about your upcoming matchup, number one, you can DM us directly, or two, tune in Sunday morning from, I guess that's 9 p.m. or 9 a.m. Eastern time to noon, 8 a.m. Central time to 11, where we will discuss every game, damn near every player, and every situation possible. So, Jorge, any parting words?
So stay tuned this week over at fantasyandframes.com for our rankings on offense and IDP, as well as defense, and hell, we'll even throw in kickers out there just because why not? We have our start and sit articles for offense and DSTs as well as for IDP coming out later in the week. Nate has been doing a fantastic job in our new series called the IDP Roundup, where he actually goes through every single game from the previous week, takes away the most pertinent information for you that you need as an IDP fantasy manager, and tells you about these players. So that way, heading into the following week's matchup, you're better informed. And especially pay attention to now, because now that we have, Buymageddon taking over, there's a lot of players potentially on teams that are on buy that you may have available on your waiver wire because people are having to add and drop players because, again, they're on buy. So definitely stay tuned for that. Either tomorrow or Friday. Again, our start and sit information we have there. Nate, you mentioned the pregame show. Follow us on YouTube, subscribe, hit the notification bell. So whenever we put out content, whether it's podcasts or pregame shows or short videos or you name it, you'll get notified and get that pertinent fantasy football information. Another network I want to plug, though, go over to our TikTok. We're actually getting a lot of engagement, a lot of views. A lot of people have been liking the content we've been putting over on TikTok. I think you'll enjoy it too if you're watching and listening. So head over there and give us a follow. Guarantee you won't regret it. And yeah, that's all I got to say there.
Cool. All right. Well, for Jorge, I'm Nate. We will see you next week.